I found out my entire life was about to blow up when my little sister's doctor looked at me over the top of her chart and asked very carefully, "Are you absolutely sure you're not her biological mother?" And my own mother, sitting in the plastic chair against the wall, dropped her purse on the floor, went bone white and whispered, "Oh God." Like someone had just opened a door she'd boarded up decades ago, and just like that, 33 years of carefully rehearsed family roles started to come apart in a fluorescent-lit exam room that smelled like rubbing alcohol and toddler snacks. My little sister, Emily, was 19 at the time, technically an adult but still young enough that Mom insisted on coming to her appointments for support. We were there because Emily had been having weird health issues for months, fatigue, dizzy spells, a couple of fainting episodes, and the campus clinic had suggested she see a specialist back in our hometown. I'd taken a day off from work to drive home and go with them because that's what I do. I'm the responsible one, the fixer, the daughter who shows up. I was sitting on the exam table with them, scrolling through old photos on my phone to distract her while we waited for the doctor, when he walked in holding a folder that looked too thick for comfort and said he wanted to go over her family medical history one more time. "So," he said, flipping pages, "according to what you filled out, you, Mom," he nodded at my mother, "have a history of hypertension and migraines, and Dad has type 2 diabetes and had a heart attack at 58, correct?" "Yes," my mother said, smoothing her skirt like the answers to those questions might be graded. "And you, Emily, have never had any major surgeries, no chronic conditions, no long-term medications aside from what we've prescribed recently?" he asked. Em nodded, eyes big. "Okay," he said. "Here's what's confusing me. Some of your test results look like there might be a hereditary component that doesn't match what we see in your parents' profiles. There's a genetic marker here," he tapped the paper, "that typically runs along specific lines of inheritance. It's present in you. It's not present in either of them, at least not in their records." He looked at me then, almost apologetically. "But it is present in you, Miss Hayes, according to the results we ran last year when you were a donor match for your father's stent trial." My brain snagged. I remembered the blood work I'd had done when Dad had some experimental procedure. They tested all of us as a matter of protocol. "That marker means what exactly?" I asked. "I don't want to jump to conclusions," he said, "but from a purely medical standpoint, the simplest explanation is that Emily shares more genetic material with you than with your parents. Which is why I asked if you were absolutely sure you weren't her biological mother." The room went quiet in that strange way where you feel like you've left your body. Emily laughed because at 19 that idea was too ridiculous to entertain. "She's 9 years older than me," she said. "She was a kid when I was born. She was 12. 16, my mother said, so quietly I almost missed it. "You were 16. The doctor frowned. "I'm sorry," he asked. My mother took a deep, shaky breath and grabbed the arms of her chair like she needed something to hold on to. "Hannah," she said, looking at me, "not the doctor, not Emily. We need to tell the truth. It might matter for her health." My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What truth?" I asked. She swallowed. "Emily is biologically yours," she said. "You are her mother." The words didn't make sense at first. They just hung there like smoke. Emily stared at her. I stared at her. The doctor stared at all of us like he just walked into a soap opera. "That's not funny," Emily said. "Mom, what are you talking about?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You were 16, Hannah," she said. "A foolish child who made a terrible mistake. We did what we had to do to protect you. To protect all of us." "No," I said, because that was all my brain could manage. "No, I wasn't. I never had a baby. I would remember having a baby. Except, there was that one thing. That one year that we didn't talk about. When I was 16 and suddenly sick for months. When I mysteriously switched to homeschool for a semester and then went to help Aunt Carol in Florida, and came back thinner, quieter, and forbidden to ever mention it. I had been told over and over that I'd had female problems, that there had been a surgery, that it was too traumatic and the doctors said not to dwell. Every time I asked for details, my mother would say, "Why do you want to relive that? It's over. You're fine now. God gave you a second chance." I had nightmares for years where I was in a hospital room and something was taken from me that I couldn't name. I told myself it was anxiety, teen hormones, the brain trying to give shape to pain. "You told me I had a cyst," I said now, my voice sounding far away. "That it ruptured. That they had to operate." My mother shook her head slowly, like maybe if she moved gently enough she could keep the world from tilting. "You were pregnant," she said. "You passed out in gym class. The school nurse called me. The test was positive. You cried and begged me not to tell your father. You said he'd disown you." I remembered crying. I remembered being terrified of my father's disappointment. He was deacon at our church, the kind of man who preached abstinence to other people's kids while telling me he trusted me to be better than that. "We prayed," my mother said. "We talked to Pastor Joel. We decided the only way to handle it was for you to disappear for a while and for us to take the baby when she was born. We told everyone we were finally blessed with a surprise second child late in life. You moved into the role you were supposed to have. Big sister." Her voice broke on the last two words. Emily let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "No," she said. "No, that doesn't make any sense. Hannah's my sister." She looked at me, eyes wild, searching my face for denial, for a joke. "Tell her she's crazy." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because beneath the shock and nausea, 100 tiny memories started slotting into place like magnets finding their poles. Being sent away for 6 months to help Aunt Carol with the twins, but never actually seeing much of the twins because I was too busy throwing up and being forced to walk laps around a condo complex to keep my strength up. A nurse calling me mom. Once when they wheeled me into the maternity ward, my mother snapping, "She's just the big sister, don't confuse her." The way she'd refused to let me hold Emily alone those first weeks home. Always hovering, always watching, always reminding me, "She is your sister, Hannah. God wiped the slate clean. Don't you dare ruin this with guilt." The doctor cleared his throat. "I'm going to, give you some privacy," he said, already halfway to the door. "From a medical standpoint, this does help explain some things. Ms. Hayes, I'll need to update some forms with you later. But this sounds like a family conversation." When the door clicked shut, Emily slid off the exam table on shaky legs. "Is this true?" she asked me. Her face looked younger than I'd seen it in years. "Did you know?" "I didn't," I said, and it was the purest truth I'd ever spoken and also not the whole story. I knew something was wrong. I knew that time was fuzzy, but I didn't know you were. "I swear to you, Em, I didn't know." She turned to our mother. "You lied to me," she said. "My whole life. You lied to both of us." My mother's chin trembled. "We protected you," she said. "We gave you a normal childhood. Do you think our church would have accepted you if they'd known you were born out of wedlock to a teenage mother in this house? Do you think your father's job at the Christian school would have survived that scandal? We made the only choice we could." "You made the choice that was easiest for you," I said, anger finally beginning to burn through the shock. "You didn't even tell me. You let me think I was crazy for years. You gaslit me every time I asked about that time. You let me grow up in the same house as my own child and never told either of us the truth." My mother's eyes flashed. "Watch your tone," she snapped, falling back into old habits even here, in the middle of a bomb crater. "I did what any good mother would do. I saved you from being ruined. I saved Emily from being branded a mistake." "You branded her yourself," I said. "You branded both of us. You just did it in secret. We didn't resolve anything in that exam room. How could we?" Emily cried until she couldn't, then stared at the wall like she'd left her body. My mother alternated between righteous indignation and weeping about how you'll never understand what it was like back then. I drove Emily back to my parents' house in silence, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her face, I felt like I'd been stripped naked. That night in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters I'd never taken down and participation trophies I'd never bothered to pack. I lay awake replaying my entire life in a new key. The way my mother had policed my clothing after M was born, like any hint of sexuality from me, might remind my father of the shame. The way she'd framed every sacrifice as something I owed them. We gave you a second chance. You owe us obedience. The way my father had gone quiet around me for a year after that mysterious Florida trip, then gradually thawed back into the gruff, affectionate man I'd always known, like he'd decided to believe his own lie. The next morning, after no sleep and too much bad coffee, I went digging. My parents have a home office with a locked filing cabinet because of course they do. The lock has never kept me out. The key lives in the third drawer of my mother's dresser under her slips. I'd known that since high school, when I used to sneak in there to find my own report cards and college financial aid forms because asking directly always got me a lecture before answers. I found it exactly where it had always been because some things never change even when everything else does. The cabinet was full of the usual grown-up paperwork. Tax returns, appliance warranties, my father's teaching contracts. And then in a folder labeled Emily, in my mother's tight, careful handwriting, I found 2 birth certificates. The first was the one I'd seen before, the one that hung in a frame in the hallway for years. My mother listed as mother, my father as father, me as sibling. The second was older, creased, with a hospital's name and logo at the top and my name, Hannah Louise Hayes, listed as the mother. The father line was blank. Emily's birth weight. Emily's APGAR scores. Emily's tiny footprint stamped in blue ink at the bottom. I don't remember signing anything, but the signature on the line that said mother's signature looked like mine, shaky and immature. 16-year-old me, who'd been raised to obey, who'd been told she'd ruined everything and this was how to make it right, probably signed whatever piece of paper was put in front of her if it meant the adults would stop yelling. Behind the birth certificates was a notarized document transferring custody to my parents. The phrase for the child's moral and spiritual well-being appeared 3 times. My stomach turned. That night, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced. She'd driven the 2 hours from our parents' town after a screaming match with our mother that ended with Dad threatening to call the police if she kept disrespecting your mother under our roof. She stood in my doorway with the duffel bag and eyes swollen from crying. "Is it true?" she asked again, even though she already knew the answer. "Did you find anything?" I handed her the birth certificates and the custody paper. She read them in silence, then sat down heavily on my couch. "So I'm your daughter," she said slowly. "And Grandma and Grandpa are actually my grandparents. And Mom is me. I'm your mother," I said, the word feeling both alien and inevitable in my mouth. Biologically, legally at first. Then I wasn't on paper. But nothing about who you are changes. You're still you. She looked up at me with a twisted smile. "You sound like a guidance counselor," she said. Then softer. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know," I said again. "Not for sure. I knew I'd lost something. I knew there was this blank space. I asked them so many times. They shut me down. They told me I was ungrateful for dragging up the past. Eventually I stopped asking." She nodded slowly. "So they lied to all of us," she said. "They lied to you about what happened. They lied to me about who I am. And now they're mad because the doctor figured it out." "Pretty much," I said. She stayed with me that weekend. We talked until 3 in the morning, crying and laughing and tiptoeing around this new word between us. Mother, daughter, sister. None of the labels fit right yet. We told each other the stories we'd never bothered to share before, because we thought we already knew each other's lives. Her favorite childhood memories. Mine. The ways our mother had shaped us in parallel but different ways. Me as the sacrificial good daughter. Her as the miracle late-in-life baby who could do no wrong as long as she stayed within certain religious lines. And then, because the universe has a dark sense of humor, the whole thing got even messier. A few weeks after the truth came out in that exam room, my parents called a family meeting. We sat around their dining table, The same table where I'd done homework and Emily had finger painted and my father had said grace every night. And they slid a stack of papers toward us. "We've been updating our estate plan," my mother said, like we were discussing new curtains, not the fallout of 33 years of lies. "We want to make sure everyone is taken care of." I flipped through the documents, scanning legalese. The gist was clear. The house and what little savings they had would go into a trust for Emily alone, on the condition that she remain in close proximity to provide care as needed, and uphold the family's spiritual values. I was mentioned only in passing as someone who would get sentimental items at the discretion of the trustee. "So Emily gets everything," I said, because there was no sense mincing words now. "And I get my soccer trophies?" My mother bristled. "You have your own life," she said. "You live 2 hours away. You have a career. Emily has always been the one who will be here when we're old. It's only right that she have the house." "Always?" I asked. "Or since you decided she was the one who would pay the bill for the lie you told?" "Don't twist this," she snapped. "This isn't about that. This is about fairness. We gave you a second chance when you got pregnant. We raised your child as our own. We bore the burden of that shame and never breathed a word. You got to go to college, build a career, live your life. We started all over again as parents at nearly 40. It is only fair that Emily, as our youngest, gets the security of this home." "As your youngest child," I said, emphasizing the word. "Or as my daughter, who you used to patch the hole in your reputation?" My father cleared his throat. "No one used anyone," he said. "We made sacrifices. All of us. You girls benefited from a stable home. That's what matters." My mother slid another paper toward me. "This is just a formality," she said. "If you sign here, you're acknowledging that you have no claim on the house. It will go directly to Emily. It will avoid probate complications later." I looked down at the line with my name under it. It felt like a replay of that signature on Emily's original birth certificate. Only this time I was old enough to know exactly what I'd be signing away. "What happens if I don't sign?" I asked. My mother's eyes went cold. "Then you're saying you care more about money than your own child's stability," she said. "You'd be forcing Emily to split the house when we're gone or sell it. Is that what you want? To take her home away from her?" "It's not her home yet," I said. "It's yours. And honestly, it was mine too once. I'm not asking you to leave me everything. I'm asking you to acknowledge that I exist beyond the mess you put me in." Emily shifted uncomfortably beside me. She'd already read the paperwork, already had her own conversation with them in private, I learned later. At the time, she just looked trapped. "I don't want any of this," she said quietly. "I don't want the house if it means everyone hates each other. You won't have to worry about that if Hannah would just do the right thing," my mother said. Something inside me snapped. "I am doing the right thing," I said. "For the first time in my life, I am not signing away my rights because you're afraid of what the church ladies will think. I'm not erasing myself so you can sleep at night. We made choices because we loved you," she said. "We loved both of you. We did what we had to. You did what was easiest for you," I said. "And now you're trying to make me pay for it twice. Once with my body when I was a teenager, and now with any claim I have to the family I thought I belonged to." I left the papers and signed. That was the day my mother decided I had turned against the family. Word got out fast. In a small town, secrets evaporate. People started asking questions. Why was Emily suddenly spending more time at my apartment? Why did I show up at church less and less? Why did my mother start referring to my worldly lifestyle in that pinched tone she reserved for people who drank wine or skipped Sunday school? The final straw came when Emily, desperate for clarity, did something I hadn't asked for and wasn't sure I wanted. She ordered one of those at-home DNA test kits. "If everyone says I'm crazy for believing you," she said, sitting at my kitchen table with the little vial in front of her, "then I want science to back us up." We both spat in our respective tubes, mailed them off, and waited. When the results came in, they were unequivocal. Shared DNA, 49.8%. Relationship, parent/child. There it was in a neat little graphic on my phone screen. Proof of what my body had always known but my brain had been trained to deny. Emily showed our mother the results. I wasn't there, but I can imagine the scene. My mother's face going cold. Her insisting that those tests aren't always accurate, and the devil uses science to confuse the faithful. Emily called me that night, voice shaking. She said, "You must have tampered with it," she said. "That you're trying to steal me from her." "You are not property," I said, rage flaring hot. "You cannot be stolen. You can choose who you have relationships with." "I don't know what I choose," she said, and started crying again. I wish I could say telling the truth fixed things. It didn't. It made everything messier before it even thought about getting better. My parents doubled down. At church, my mother crafted a story where I had fallen under bad influences and was confused and trying to rewrite history. She told people I was manipulating Emily, turning her against her real parents because I was jealous. She left out the part where she'd lied to the hospital, the school, the state. Some relatives believed her. Some called me privately and said things like, "We always wondered about the timing, but your mom said it was a miracle baby, so we didn't press." A few apologized for not asking more questions back then. Most just wanted to know the gossip. In the middle of all this, Emily's health stabilized with treatment now tailored to her actual genetic risk factors. You'd think my parents would see that as a sign that truth is, I don't know, medically useful. Instead, my mother used every appointment as an opportunity to play martyr. "If we hadn't taken you in, you wouldn't be here," she'd tell Emily. "We saved your life before you were born. Now your so-called mother is trying to ruin it." One night, after hearing that my mother had cornered Emily in the kitchen and asked her point blank, "If it comes down to it, you're going to choose me, aren't you?" I realized something. As long as the secret lived only between the five of us, my parents could control the story. They could paint themselves as heroes and me as a villain. They could tell Emily that DNA didn't matter, that God's will did. They could tell themselves whatever helped them sleep. I couldn't live like that anymore. So I did the thing my mother had always warned would destroy the family. I told the truth to other people. I sat down with my Aunt Carol, the one I'd supposedly helped in Florida, and asked her what she remembered. She cried and said she'd always felt guilty, that she'd tried to talk my mother into letting me keep the baby myself, but my parents had insisted it would ruin your life and mark the child forever. I showed her the DNA results. She hugged me and said, "I am so sorry. We thought we were helping. We should have done better." I told a couple of close cousins, the ones who'd always suspected something was off. They were angry on my behalf, which helped and hurt at the same time. Word spread. Eventually, the story reached people who weren't inclined to see nuance. "Your daughter is slandering you," a church lady told my mother. "You don't deserve this." My mother called me in a fury. "Are you happy now?" she demanded. "You've dragged our private sacrifice into the street. You're making me out to be a monster." "I'm telling the truth," I said. "If the truth makes you look bad, that's not on me." "You are ungrateful," she said. "We could have made you give that baby up to strangers. We kept her. We loved her. We raised her. And this is how you repay us." "By acknowledging reality," I said. "By letting her know who she is? That's repayment. That's the least I can do after being part of your lie, even unintentionally, for so long." My father got on the line then, something he hardly ever did. "Enough," he said. "This fighting is killing your mother. You need to stop stirring things up. You need to stop hiding behind her skirts," I said, and hung up before I could hear whatever righteous speech he had loaded. The house fight escalated too. My mother started talking to lawyers about changing the will again, this time to include some clawback language that would punish any heir who defames the family. It was ridiculous and probably unenforceable, but it showed me where her head was. Not on reconciliation, but on control. In the end, there was no dramatic courtroom scene. No big legal battle over the house. My parents are still alive. The trust won't activate until they're gone. I've already made peace with the fact that my share, if there is one, may end up tied up in litigation for years, or vanish entirely if they manage to spend it all out of spite. What did happen was quieter, and in some ways more heartbreaking. Emily moved out. Not to my place, not right away. She got a job near campus, moved into an apartment with friends, put some literal distance between herself and the constant tug of war. Our relationship went through its own awkward adolescence. There were months she barely answered my texts, months she was clearly absorbing my mother's narrative that I was trying to steal her, months where she'd swing the other way and call me at midnight to ask, "Did you ever feel like you didn't belong either?" We went to therapy separately, then together. We cried a lot. We laughed some too, the dark, absurd laughter of people who've seen behind the curtain and are trying not to choke on the dust. A couple of years after the big reveal, Emily asked me quietly over coffee if I'd be willing to be listed as her mother on some future paperwork, medical, maybe legal someday. "I don't want to hurt them more than they've already been hurt," she said. "But I want reality reflected somewhere, even if it's just in a file." I said yes, of course, not because a piece of paper would suddenly make me her real mom. Biology did that without asking either of us, but because it was something she wanted for herself. My parents don't know about that yet. They will eventually. Secrets don't stay buried forever. If I've learned anything, it's that. Now I'm 39. Emily's 23. Sometimes she introduces me as her sister. Sometimes in safe spaces she says, "This is my mom." Long story. My parents and I are not estranged exactly, but something close. I send birthday cards. I call on holidays. I still feel a responsibility to check that they have what they need, the old conditioning of the responsible daughter refusing to die. But the easy affection is gone. Trust is gone. My mother still insists when we talk that she did what any mother would do. She still says I ripped the family apart by going public with the truth. She still hints that if I just signed those papers and kept my mouth shut, we could have moved on. Maybe she's right in the narrowest sense. If I'd signed away my claim to the house, kept the DNA test between the five of us, nodded along when she called Emily our miracle, we could have lived out the rest of their lives in a brittle semblance of harmony. Emily would have grown older thinking her mother was the woman who'd raised her, and I would have stayed in the role I'd been assigned at 16, the penitent older sister who made a mistake and spends the rest of her life atoning by never rocking the boat. But every time I picture that life, my chest tightens, because I know what it feels like to doubt your own memories, to feel a hole in your history and be told it doesn't exist. I still flinch when doctors ask about my reproductive history. I still get a phantom ache in my abdomen sometimes when I think about that unnamed surgery. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, least of all my own child. Even if she didn't ask to be my child. Even if she wasn't raised to think of me that way. So that's my story, internet strangers. I'm the woman who was told as a teenager that she'd had female problems and a procedure, only to find out in a doctor's office 20 years later that the baby she thought was her little sister is actually her daughter, that her parents lied to everyone, including themselves, for 3 decades, and that they expected her to keep lying, sign away any claim to the family home, and let them go to their graves as the heroic couple who rescued a child instead of the people who stole the truth. From 2 of them, I chose not to sign. I chose to show Emily the birth certificate, take the DNA test, and start telling the truth. Even though it shattered whatever was left of the daughter-parent relationship I'd spent my whole life trying to preserve. My parents say I've destroyed the family and poisoned my daughter against them. I say they built a family on a lie and I just stopped agreeing to hold the scaffolding. But I still lie awake some nights wondering if I stole Emily's innocence, if I took away her right to believe in the only story she'd ever known. If you were in my shoes, if you found out your little sister was actually the baby your parents forced you to hand over as a teenager, and those same parents tried to pressure you into signing away any claim to the family home to keep the secret intact, would you have done what I did and told her the truth, refused to sign, and let the chips fall where they may, even knowing it would probably blow up your relationship with your parents forever? Or would you have kept the secret and signed the papers for peace, letting your daughter go on thinking she was just your sister so everyone else could keep pretending nothing ever happened?